Hello everybody, my name is Father David Matz, with the Missionaries of the Precious Blood and living here in Sonnino House in Berkeley, California. Sonnino House is a mission of the Missionaries of the Precious Blood, and our mission is one to place of hope and healing, provide a place of hope and healing where people can find a place where they can pause, a place where they can engage with others in conversation, and a place where they find a supportive and life-giving environment, a community, to be able to help them go forth and be creative in the world as Catholic Christians. Today, we got someone here who does just that kind of work, that kind of bridge work, bringing people together, renewal, reconciliation. Justin Telthorst here from emptychairs.org. So I just want to give this over to him and share his talk today, Belonging, Love That Finds Us First.
I am a recovering people pleaser, but in my heyday, I was working for actually a Catholic organization helping to coordinate short-term international mission trips around the globe. And I thought it was going to be a great time for me to just kind of say yes to everything. So at the time I was helping to coordinate, 15 mission trips around the world. That was like fundraising, teaching people how to lead trips. But we also had our huge annual training week that we led, not in the United States, but down in Mexico. So kind of getting that all scheduled with everyone. There was also, every year, a number of trips that happened right before Christmas, and those were kind of a mixed bag of whether people wanted them or not. Because on one hand, it was really nice to be going down to someplace warm right before Christmas, but it was also right before Christmas, right before our national conference, and then again right before our huge training. On top of that, I was also going to be emceeing this training event, and I was also in the middle of my own crisis of faith, trying to determine, what I thought about church teachings on certain things and how I was going to be engaging with them. And so, of course, me wanting to say yes to everybody decided that I was going to be going on this trip. And it was a lot. There was this conflict that I always felt every single day between what I knew that I was supposed to be saying and supporting by virtue of being a missionary with this organization, but also the own internal difficulties, challenges, questions that were going on in my own heart that I just wasn't able to share while I was there. And every single day I was counting down day after day after day, like 4 days left, 3 days left. Until finally, it was the last morning and I thought I just have to wake up, I can get on my plane and go home back to Illinois. But I woke up and we were flying in and out of Florida, and I woke up to the sound of thunder and torrential rain coming down. And I just knew in that moment that everything was going to be delayed. And sure enough, I wake up and I'm checking on my flight and all the flights of my students, the college students that I was with, and everybody's flights are delayed or canceled. So we all go to the airport, and I'm just spending the morning running around trying to make sure, okay, you've got a flight, your layovers are okay, can we get you through security? This is only your third time flying here. Everybody goes out. I'm the last person in this group to be flying out that morning. And I get in this very long line to go to the gate agent. And I finally get up to the front. I'm like, I'm going to be the best passenger ever, right? I'm going to get up. I'm going to check my bags. I'm going to have my ID ready. I'm not going to make anybody behind me mad. It's going to go perfectly. So I get up to the desk, and I say, hey, this is my flight number, whatever. Put my bags on the way station there. And the agent just looks over and says, oh, by the way, you need to make sure that your name and your phone number are on all of your bags. Now, to kind of put into picture what was going on in my brain, or what wasn't going on in my brain at this point, my first response to that was to reach in my bag, grab a Sharpie, and start writing in large letters, Justin Telthorst, and my phone number on the side of my 2 huge backpacks. And about halfway through that, it suddenly hit me, I'd never done this before whenever I was flying, and I look up and my eye catches the bowls of, those white paper tags that most people use, most normal people, when they're, flying. And then I look over at the gate agent, and she just gives me this look that says, oh dear, this poor kid. But at this point, it's the sunk cost fallacy. I've come this far. I have to finish it out. Finish writing my number, throw my Sharpie back in my bag, and I'm just standing there waiting for the agent to give me my boarding passes and check my bags. And she's kind of clicking away a little bit longer than seems normal, wondering what's going on, until finally she goes, okay, you got your first flight to Atlanta and then you're connecting to Chicago. Looks like your first one is delayed and you might miss your connecting flight. Now, I went ahead and booked you on another flight to make sure that even if you missed that connecting flight, You're going to be able to get to Chicago. Your bags are going to follow you all the way to Chicago, kind of no matter what happens. Here are all of your boarding passes. It's already taken care of. You're good to go. As someone who had spent weeks and weeks prior to this looking after other people, kind of shoving down what I needed and just trying to make everybody else happy, the fact that she kind of took care of everything without me having to ask a thing, a complete and total stranger, I'm just feeling overwhelmed. I try to start explaining what this means to me, and the tears start falling down, and it's just kind of this blubbering mess of nothingness until she just interrupts me and just says, "Can I give you a hug?" I just nod, I start bawling, she comes around the counter, gives me this huge mom hug, and then I stroll off on my way, trying to avoid the gaze of all the people that I had just, had wait in line for 10 or 15 minutes longer than they would have otherwise. But this complete stranger, out of the complete goodness of her heart, saw me in that moment, saw my humanity and what I needed, and just loved me. And so what I want you to take away in listening to this today, whenever you're listening to this, is the fact that we in our Catholic faith, that the heart of our faith is understanding that we are first loved. We don't earn our love, we receive it. And so to talk through this, we're going to go through three things today. We're going to talk about what keeps us from experiencing the sense of love and belonging. What does Jesus have to say about us? How does Jesus respond? And then finally looking at what does this mean for us in the here and now. So this first point, why don't we belong? Or why don't we feel like we belong or experience love so often? Brene Brown has a quote about this. I absolutely love her. She is a researcher and storyteller who looks into this understanding into what facilitates how people experience love and belonging. And this quote that I first heard years ago says, that there are two groups of people. There are those who feel a deep sense of love and belonging and those who struggle for it. And there's only one variable that separates these two groups. Those who feel lovable, who love, who experience belonging, simply believe that they are worthy of love and belonging. I'm just going to read that last sentence again. Those who feel lovable, who love, and who experience belonging simply believe they are worthy of love and belonging. Isn't that one of the most beautiful and most annoying quotes you have ever heard? I remember when I first heard it, I was like, oh, Brene, you are so right. It is that simple. I just need to believe that I'm loved and then everything's going to fall into place. But the longer I've sat with that quote year after year as I come back to it, I realize how difficult that is to actually live that out, to accept that. And why is it? Like, shouldn't we as Catholics, as Christians, in one sense, be the people who believe that the most? After all, we believe that we exist because God loves us. The only reason we are here in the here and now is because at every moment, God's love is willing us into existence. But so often, we don't experience that. We aren't loved the way we want to be or the way we need to be. We experience rejection from those we love, from friends, from family, maybe from even neighbors and strangers. We reject ourselves and who we are. And sometimes we even feel rejected by God. Now, one way that I have experienced this, one challenging time in my life was when I was discerning seminary. But what's the unhelpful phrase, 3 times a bridesmaid, never a bride? Well, I am 3 times discerning seminary, never a priest. So the second time that I was applying to seminary, or trying to apply to seminary, was a long process. I was looking for a diocese where I wasn't growing up or going to school in the Denver diocese. But everything suddenly seemed to be falling into place this time. I had been working in the diocese the summer before. I was hoping to apply. I met a seminarian who worked there, was really trying to help me get connected to families, and the vocations director. I had really good conversations with the vocations director. There was a discernment day that I was flying out to in the fall of my senior year of college, and it just happened to be one of my free weekends that year. And so I fly out there, and again, flight goes perfectly, unlike so many of my other trips. I show up and I'm staying with this wonderful Catholic family. We're going out to dinner, and I can just see myself living in this diocese, being a part of this community, going to this seminary. The day of discernment is wonderful. I feel nothing but peace, and like this is the direction where God is calling me to. And so at the end of this day, I'm sitting down with the vocations director, which for me feels like a mere formality. And he's about to give me permission, like, yep, you're good to apply. And in my mind, if I was good to apply, then I was as good as being in. And so I sit down, and he says to me, you know what, Justin? I looked through your psychological evaluation from the first time you were applying to seminary, and there were just a few things that caused me concern, and I really want you to go to therapy for a year before I let you go to seminary. I was absolutely devastated. Everything in my life at this point had been leading up to going to seminary and trying to be a priest. I had changed majors my junior year of college. I'd taken a year of Latin. I was majoring in philosophy. I mean, I was majoring in the priesthood or going to grad school. Like, how could I afford to move to Denver to pay for therapy and just the risk and uncertainty of moving to a new city without any promise or hope of me ever actually achieving this thing that I felt so called and drawn to. And so I left that office and went to the church nearby and just started crying because I felt so betrayed by him for not having mentioned anything sooner. I felt like I had failed myself, like I wasn't good enough. But I think the most was I felt hurt and betrayed by God in that moment. That God, who seemed to be leading me up to this moment, all of this peace, it was like this horrible bait and switch of saying, hey, you're called to seminary. Oh, just kidding. Figure your life out on your own. And so in that moment after that, I almost lived college backwards. After being the really good kid freshman year up to my first semester senior year of college, I just felt like I'm done with this. I'm done trying to be the good Catholic because that seemed to get me nowhere. And so I thought, the worst thing I was going to do was go hang out with the edgy Catholic students who would go to Mass on Sunday, but also they had a really fun time on Saturday night. Now, before I kind of conclude that story, I want to take a moment to look at kind of how does Jesus respond in moments where we're feeling rejected or like we don't have a place in the church, in our community. And so we're going to be looking at the story at the end of the Gospel of John where Jesus has appeared to a couple of the other disciples, but Peter is off fishing with some of the other disciples. Jesus meets them on the shore and has some questions for Peter. Now, I don't know about you, but the Gospels annoy me a lot of the times. I just find that they are so short. It seems like there's so much missing information. And it's just like you're telling me that there are these random guys sitting on the seashore, that are, this tax collector in his hut. And a random stranger walks up one day and just says, hey, come follow me. They dropped everything and followed Jesus. And so I think sometimes we miss the humanity, the larger story of what's going on. And so what I want to do right now is just give what I call a Justin translation, which is based partly on imaginative prayer, looking at the bigger picture of Scripture here, and just throwing in some stuff that I think is helpful into the context and just to rehumanizing these stories here. So if you want to, you can close your eyes. If you want to, you can just kind of gaze gently at the floor and just let your mind, if you're imaginative, kind of enjoy this picture here. So the star of our story today is Peter, right? He is kind of the leader of the apostles. He is brash, he is bold, he says what's on the first thing that comes to mind, and he's always right there with Jesus. He's the one that pulls out the sword on Holy Thursday. He says, Jesus, no matter what, I'm going to be with you. Like, I will die with you if that's what it takes. And Jesus predicts this at dinner, right? When they're at dinner together, he says, no, Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times. And so just a few hours later, after Peter makes this huge prediction, there he is in the courtyard, and time again, he denies Jesus, says, I don't know him. And in one of the Gospels, it says that in that moment, the 3rd time that Peter denied Jesus, that Peter made eye contact with Jesus, that he saw him in that moment. And what must have gone through Peter's heart? We know he ran away. He was gone for the rest of the day. All the other disciples fled. How did he feel when he heard that Judas had taken his life? As a leader of the apostles, did he feel like he had failed, that he lost someone? A few days later, when these accounts of Jesus being raised from the dead, of Jesus appearing to people, how did Peter feel in that moment that Jesus didn't first appear to him? He appeared to Mary Magdalene, some disciples on the way. And even when doubting Thomas, Jesus appears to him, he still hasn't talked to Peter at this point. Perhaps there was this sense of rejection, that he wasn't good enough for Jesus to talk to him yet. Maybe he felt like a failure. And so the beginning of our story today, we see that Peter just returns to what he knew, to being a fisherman. He goes back to the Sea of Galilee, hops on his boat, and returns to his job that apparently he wasn't very good at. And so he's there fishing all night, and he's tired, and he must be thinking, I am a failure at everything. I can't even go back to my job and catch any fish. And then suddenly, as dawn is breaking, this stranger on the shore calls out to him and says, hey, how's it going? And Peter's like, well, not very good. And this very confident stranger goes like, oh, you haven't caught any fish? Well, have you tried throwing your nets on the opposite side of the boat? And I can't help but think Peter's just like, oh, have you thought about throwing your nets on the opposite side of the boat? Like, why didn't I think of that? But he does, perhaps for whatever reason he listens to this guy. And suddenly it's like back at the very beginning, one of the first moments where Peter encounters Jesus. The nets are full, they are overwhelmed. And in that moment, Peter recognizes Jesus. And he doesn't help his buddies, he doesn't think, he jumps into the water, swims back to Jesus, half clothed, crawling up on the shore, and is finally with Jesus again, thinking, this is my turn. This is finally my chance where Jesus is here to talk to me. Jesus makes him breakfast. Perhaps there's some awkward small talk until Jesus goes, hey, Peter, let's go for a walk. Is he nervous? Is he afraid that he's going to be called out and rebuked again? And so they're walking silently on the shore, shoulder to shoulder, just the sound of the sand and rocks crunching under their feet, until at a moment, Jesus pauses and says, hey, Peter, I love you. Peter goes, yeah, I know you love me. More silence follows as they're walking together. Hey, Peter, I want you to know that I love you. And Peter goes, yes, I know, Jesus, yes, I know you love me. Yep, yeah, we're good. They walk a little bit further in silence until finally Jesus stops him again, looks at him, and says, Peter, I want you to know that I love all of you. Now, there's no trick in the Greek that I'm doing here. I'm not looking at some special translation. Yes, in the original story, Jesus asks Peter, Peter, do you love me? But we don't ask someone, do you love me, unless we love them first. And how easy is it for us to just brush off those moments when we need to hear that love, when we need to believe that we belong, that we're not rejected, that we aren't a failure. And how easy is it for us to simply reject and brush off the fact like, oh yes, I know you love me. I know you say that you love me. Because those voices of feeling rejected, of not being wanted, of not being good enough, so often are so loud in our minds. But like Jesus on that shore, he's willing to tell us over and over and over again, I love you, I love you, I love you, until it finally sinks in with that third time. And Peter saying to Jesus, you know everything. You know that I messed up. You know that I am brash and that I don't think before I speak. But Jesus says in that moment that, Peter, you are good enough. And in the Gospel of John, this is actually the first time that Jesus says to Peter, follow me. It's almost as if John is saying, it isn't that Peter was perfect. It wasn't that Jesus was inviting some perfect, idealized person to lead the church, but actually someone who had failed, who had fallen short. And that was going to be the foundation of the church. Now, I think sometimes with this story, we can fall into fairy tale Catholicism, where, look, Peter denied Jesus 3 times. Peter said, I love you 3 times in front of this redemption moment, and everything is perfect. There's a bow on it. They all lived happily ever after. And I know in my own life, when I think about that vocation story and the fact that things didn't work out, that I was supposed to, I was rejected from going to seminary, that the answer right now is to say, and this is how Jesus met me and made it all make sense, and I went to seminary 3 years later and everything was perfect. But the problem is in that story that Jesus doesn't protect us from being hurt, but he's always with us in the midst of it. Yes, Jesus warned his disciples that he was going to suffer, that he was going to die, even though it never sunk in. I think because there is nothing that we can do that can make us impenetrable to the hurts of this world. And that Jesus as our model is not someone that shies away, that tries to prevent being hurt, that tries to avoid the fact that we're going to be rejected and be unwelcome. But the fact that Jesus shows us that we can experience that and move through it. That with Peter there can be loss, there can be hurt, there can be rejection, but that Jesus will come alongside us and walk with us through in the midst of all of that. And in my own life, after feeling so hurt and so frustrated by the church in that moment, and saying I'm done with it, and unsure what I was supposed to do next with my life, I remember as in the January after that happened, reaching out to a friend and mentor and just saying, hey, life is really tough right now. Like, can we just talk? Now at the time, I was living in a studio apartment with another friend, and we had bunk beds, so you know that not a whole lot of fun was happening in that apartment. So I didn't have any place that was like quiet and secure that I actually have conversation. So I put on like 2 coats and my hat and my gloves to go sit in my car a few blocks away and freeze, so that I thought as I was calling my friend, because I was also too cheap to just like use the gas of having my car on. And so I call him up, and I'm saying everything in my mind. Like, I'm mad, I'm hurt, I'm angry, I'm crying. I don't know what to do. How could God let this happen? And he didn't fix things. He didn't try to silver lining it and say, hey, God's going to make this work, it's all going to be okay. He just listened to me. And he was with me in the midst of that. And he said, okay, what do you want to do next? And I was like, I'm just so bad. Like, I'm done with the church. I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to go run off and do whatever I want. And he's like, okay. Like, I'm here to be with you no matter what. And as I look back, like, that was one of those first moments where I felt Jesus just with me in the midst of that. Just Jesus with me, walking along the shore, through my friends saying, I still love you. I'm still with you. And I think that Jesus still loves you too. And in the months after that, there wasn't some picture-perfect understanding of how things worked out. But it was moments of us experiencing love through that friend, through those, edgy Catholics who would go out drinking on Saturday nights, and, starting to experience real friendship where I wasn't just trying to be perfect. I wasn't just trying to prove myself that I was good enough to go to seminary. That I could just have genuine conversations with my friends, with questioning, with uncertainty. And time again, slowly just hearing God's voice with me in the midst of that, I love you, I am still with you. And so several years later, actually that draw towards seminary happened again. And this time I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do everything right. I moved out to Denver, found a therapist, I checked all the right boxes, and almost exactly 3 years later, I was sitting back down at the seminary for a day of discernment, and at the end of that day, meeting with the vocations director, actually a different one this time, and kind of, uncertain how this day was going to end. And I'm sitting down with him, and I'm like, can I apply to seminary for next year? And he goes, yeah, Justin, you've done everything, you're good to go. If you want to apply to seminary, 100% go for it. And you would think in that moment, after everything that I'd worked for, that it would be like a, yes, this is it, this is what I want. But I realized in all of that work, in everything that I'd done, that I'd lost part of myself. Because I was trying to become this perfect person I thought I had to be to experience God's love, when as I started looking back at those years prior, that I thought I didn't get into seminary because I was broken. But the consistent message of Jesus through all of that was, you are still loved, you are good, I am right here. And I thought I was going to seminary to feel closer to Jesus, when Jesus was already right there with me in my car in that conversation with my friend, that cold January so many years ago. And then I thought I was going to seminary to experience connection and friendship, when actually the people who were walking with me through that whole time, that was the deep, meaningful friendship that I was actually looking for so long. And so I remember finally, letting know, hey, thank you, but I'm actually not gonna apply? And I almost couldn't believe that I was saying that to him after all of that work that I did. But after sending that, there was just this question of, well, Jesus, what do I do next? So much of my life has been trying to go to seminary, and I'm turning this down. What do I do with my life? And while I know there are many people who are blessed with the gift of hearing God say very clearly, this is what I want you to do. Is it marriage? Is it priesthood? Is it a specific ministry? I have not had the gift of that experience. But I have had Jesus tell me very annoyingly, Justin, what do you want to do? No, Jesus, like, you don't understand. I'm here to do whatever you want me to do. What is it that you want me to do? Just tell me and I'll go do it. And it's, no, Justin. What's the gift of your life that you want to give me? At the end of all this, when we get to meet, what is it that you want to tell me about? What's the life that you're excited to share with me? And that question has been far scarier, and I think in some senses far more demanding. For me, it would have been easy for God to just tell me, this is what I want you to do, go do it. The far harder task in my life has been understanding what are the gifts and desires that God has already placed in my heart. What is the hurt I see in the world that I want to help address? How do I feel called to love God, to love my neighbor, and to love myself within all of who I am? And do the slow process of discernment and discovery for how do my unique gifts, talents, and imperfections contribute to, expanding the kingdom of God this side of eternity. But doing that from a place of, I need to earn God's love, I need to get to the right place, is scary and unhelpful. But asking those questions from a place of, I'm already loved, I'm not here I'm not here with a God who's just waiting for me to mess up. I'm here with a God who already loves me and just wants me to give my life back to him as a gift. And this is so essential to our faith, right? When we are first welcomed in the family of God through baptism, so many of us are baptized when we're kids. Before we can even say yes or agree to anything, that gift into the family of God is given to us. When we go to Mass and we receive communion, we show up with empty hands and in open mouths like beggars and simply receive Jesus who loves us. And I think the same thing is true when it comes to our vocation for how we want to live in the world. Not through these three simple things of, marriage or priesthood or religious life, but how we are called to live as a gift to the world. That's something we get to discover, not to be good enough to earn God's love or get to heaven, but to return our life as a gift back to God. And so the thing I want to leave you with today is this question. How would your life be different if you went through life knowing you are loved and your job was simply to receive that love? How would your life be different if you went through it knowing you are already loved and your job is simply to receive that love? And like that Brene Brown quote I shared at the beginning, I hope you find that annoying. I hope you find it too simple. Because perhaps the greatest mystery of our faith is not the Trinity or the Eucharist, but those three simple words, you are loved. But the gift of our lives is that we get to spend all of our life receiving that and understanding it.